Today I'd like to talk about a comment that's occasionally been made whenever I've shown someone my polystyrene drawing projects on my phone in the past, which is that they can't draw. The reality is that whenever someone says that, what they really mean is essentially that they can't draw yet. Some people feel that whenever someone is particularly good at drawing or some other thing, that person is gifted. I once saw somebody make a comment as such that I have a gift when after my mom posted some then relatively recent polystyrene drawing projects. I recall those completed projects were from 2022 back in the day, which in a sense is kind of my peak, as it was essentially when I made the most progress in my polystyrene drawing projects. I am not gifted. It's just that in the past I have practiced considerably more in terms of this artistic niche I happened to stumble upon when I was 14 years old after finding a small piece of polystyrene in the basement at where I am currently, my mom's place. I decided to pick that piece of polystyrene up, and at the time I decided to draw on it with a number 2 pencil, and then I drew on polystyrene that I either found in the basement or somewhere else at the time, some of it from packaging. After a bit, I graduated to black ink pens, and then any permanent markers, as I found that with those it was easier to mark my medium of choice, which was polystyrene. Nobody is born with a gift. I am no different from anyone else. The reality is that if anyone wanted to, they could become just as good as I happen to become through consistent practice through all the practice I've done over the years, in part because a handful of years ago, my dad requested that I draw him a bunch of Marvel/comic book characters, and for which I'm grateful, as I feel that that is a large part of what ultimately led to me becoming as good as I am currently with drawing on polystyrene. That, and whenever I didn't have a request from my dad, I just drew what I wanted to at the time, which I continue to do today with the third Anka polystyrene drawing project. If you watch the evolution of my styrofoam drawings video on my YouTube channel, if you search for that, and watch it, you'll see that my earlier polystyrene drawings are nowhere near as good as my more recent ones. The last ones in the video slideshow, And yet, despite how much progress I have made in the past, are there still I am still at least a little nervous right before I start a new project. And that's because that's the hardest part of not only any polystyrene drawing project, but for everything. The most difficult part of any task is starting it. And even today, when I am working on a polystyrene drawing project, there are still points in which I either feel a little like I've messed up or that I'm not entirely satisfied with how the project is going. But in spite of that, I have finished nearly every polystyrene drawing project that I have started in the past. And even the polystyrene drawing projects I have not yet finished, I plan on doing so one day. If you may not be able to draw / paint as well as I or anyone else who has practiced as much as I have currently. But if you make an effort to spend some time on practicing, then you, just like anyone else, can learn how to draw, because drawing is just like any other skill. Just like cooking or math or a foreign language. Anyone can learn it if they're willing to overcome a feeling of nervousness they may get upon trying when they're trying something new. And put in the effort and keep putting in effort. If you can do that, then as long as you say to yourself that even if there are times where you feel like you've made a mistake or that you're not making progress, as long as you keep going anyway, there will come a point in which you are able to draw considerably better. And once you reach that point, you will be able to do the unique human you will have the unique human experience of creating something from nothing. And it's not the fact that you've created something that's special. It's in the journey. Those generative artificial intelligence tools, they don't create something from nothing. They essentially make derivative works from things we've made. Things presumably either things that us humans have made or from other generative artificial intelligence tools. And I really do enjoy creating something from nothing, being able to create whatever I want to create with nothing but this essentially foam and Sharpie markers. Obviously, not everyone is going to want to draw / paint with permanent Sharpie permanent markers like I do, but if you're watching this and you've thought about drawing in the past, then the truth is you just have to be willing to set aside some time each day to practice. It could be anything. Just make an effort to put some permanent marker on a piece of any piece of polystyrene you can find, or whatever other medium you would like to use. It doesn't necessarily have to be polystyrene. That's just my niche that I ultimately decided upon. And even though that may feel like at times I'm doing something entirely unique, but the truth is that's just not possible, because there's basically 8 billion others besides me on this planet. And as such, it's not possible to do something entirely unique. My polystyrene drawings didn't really get to the quality level they're at currently until about 2022. It'll take some time and effort to learn this skill of drawing, but again, the truth is it's a skill. And because it's a skill, it can be learned by anyone. You don't have to be born with it. Nobody's born with any ability to draw / paint with Sharpie markers. I wasn't. I just ultimately began by deciding to draw on polystyrene with Sharpie markers because that's what I wanted to do. And probably one reason why it took as long as it did for me to get better was for a long time I didn't really care about how good of a job I was doing with the polystyrene drawing projects, but perhaps if I had cared, and then at some point, like magic, I got better at drawing on the polystyrene drawing projects, and then I started caring, and then I got even better. Ultimately, my advice to you is just think about some things you would like to try to draw and look for images of those things online so that you can use them as reference images while you draw. How I do it these days is I primarily make dots on the polystyrene, and then I connect those dots. That's how I do it these days. Did I always do it that way? No, I don't think it was until relatively recently that I did that, but ultimately that's how I do it currently. My current style didn't really develop until like last year or so. If you want to learn how to draw. If you've thought that that's something you would like to do, I cannot guarantee that it will be easy. Again, it'll take time and effort to learn this skill, just like any other skill. But I can guarantee that if you just keep putting in the time and effort, even during times in which you feel discouraged, as they will naturally come, then eventually, like magic, there will come a day in which you are able to express yourself in your own way through drawing/painting with Sharpie markers. And that's the position where I'm at currently. That's ultimately what I enjoy doing most. And if that's something you would like to learn too, ultimately all it is a matter of putting in the time and effort.